I'll bite, Judd. What's the bottom of the truth?
Well, sometimes that is better.
Hello, friends and fiends. Welcome back to Blood and Guts, HHN, for another segment of Hail to the King. With me, as always, Mad Matt. How's it going, Matt?
Yeah, I'm okay. Like this, what we're getting ready to talk about, Friends and Fiends, is a movie I've been waiting for a while. It's a movie that was announced back in 2019. Was supposed to originally hit theaters in 2022. Got shelved for 2 years. Finally come out, and that movie is, of course, Salem's Lot.
That's right.
So with that being said, how are you doing, Evil Adam?
I'm not going to get that moment of my life back after watching this movie.
No.
As you know, like we're discussing the new Salem's Lot, streaming now on Max.
Mm-hmm.
I've not been very optimistic for this one, but I was holding a little bit of hope.
Right.
Just a little bit of hope.
Yeah, I kind of lost optimism once I knew they were shelving it for two years, and then find out it was going to go straight to streaming instead of having a theatrical window. Because even though my optimism was down, I still would have paid money to go watch this movie and give it a chance. Which is, I mean, obviously I gave it a chance watching it on Max. But
yeah.
One thing we want to say, Friends and Fiends, though, before we do continue forward, this will have spoilers throughout. So if you've not seen the movie and you're wanting to avoid any spoilers, then we suggest go ahead and stop the video now, go watch the movie, and then come back to us.
Yep, and we will be also kind of using the Tobe Hooper classic.
Yep.
And the miniseries featuring Rob Lowe and that great cast. Also, so if you haven't seen those, I definitely recommend those over this one. But check those out as well. But let's go ahead and kick it off here. What do we got?
Well, obviously we got the remake to Salem's Lot. Like I said, mentioned earlier, was commissioned in 2019. Ended up being directed by Gary Dauberman, if I'm pronouncing it correctly, and produced by James Wan. So you have the team that's behind the Conjuring universe. And I know you're not much on paranormal movies like that, but I think they're pretty good for what they are. So that when I first heard they were behind it, gave me like some optimism. Has a good cast attached to it. You got Bill Pullman's son, Lewis Pullman, who played Bob in Top Gun Maverick.
Right.
You got Mackenzie Lee, who's playing Susan Norton. Alfre Woodard, who's playing Dr. Cody, and that's the one we mentioned. One of our favorite Christmas movies of all time, where she plays Grace.
Yep.
And she does. I think she does good for what she's given in this one. The biggest miss, as far as not miscast, just misused, is William Sadler, who's playing the Sheriff Parkins Gillespie.
Yep.
And then you got Bill Camp playing Matthew Burke, Pilos Absek, who's playing Straker. And then a couple round out the cast. We got John Benjamin Hickey playing Father Callahan, and Jordan Carter playing little boy Mark. And then you got Alexander Ward playing Barlow. And then we have some other characters mixed in there, but those are your main players. So, like I said, with the cast itself, it had a promising cast. Great talent behind it.
Yeah.
So it's really perplexing how this one kind of missed the mark.
Yeah, it was, and let's go ahead and touch on some pros and cons that we each have.
Right.
And I'll go ahead and name a few, and then you can name some pros and cons.
Yep.
Obviously, there are more cons than pros. A few pros that I have is I do like that it's in the 70s.
Right.
I know that the Tobe Hooper one, stuck to that old school feel. The Rob Lowe one is set in more current times, but it pulls it off really well because you got time to let the characters steep and develop.
Right.
This one takes place in the 70s. I did like that. There were some very interesting transitions in this one that I enjoyed, where it shows the index card on the desk of the stapler, and then it shows the fade in looking down the stairs with that same pattern, that kind of spiral pattern.
Right.
So there's several good transitions here. Stylistically, Some of the shots I like were when he's following them in the forest.
I love that. I love that scene.
That was a great shot, and you can tell what they've done here is they've built a forest set for the actors to walk on, and they have a background behind that. Over here they have a dolly where they're pulling the camera, so they're not actually in the forest set. They're probably on flat ground,
right?
Which adds this really cool flowing motion through the forest. That was really well done, and there were several well done lighting techniques and shots in this film, and those are some good pros that I will say about the film.
Yeah, I have to agree with you over there. Like I said, the style of the film, the way it's shot, I thought was well done. I thought as far as like the setups to some things were great. I love the practical effects for the most part in this movie. I like the looks of the vampires.
Yep.
This is me personally. I don't know how you feel about that, but I like the looks of the vampires. They kind of, like I said, they kept to that practical effects piece. Now, one thing I did like that I'm seeing like a lot of little backlash on too, though, but I thought was actually a nice touch, is when you have a cross and you actually have faith that cross will work, that it actually does light up and repels the vampires. I thought that was really cool how they put that in the movie.
Right.
And then seeing the vampires when they were repelled, like go up. I believe his name was Mike in the movie. No, it wasn't Mike. I can't remember. It might have been Mike. The one that was one that was the gravedigger. Goes up against the wall, does a spin out of the room into the next room whenever Matthew's going against him. But I thought that was a wonderful touch. Love the soundtrack. I think that really adds to the vibe that you're talking about where it was set in the 70s. So you got that Gordon Lightfoot playing at the very beginning.
Yep,
and
you
at
had
the
some
end.
good tunes in that.
So bookends the movie.
Donovan tunes when he's in the bar.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love the house.
The Marston house looked great. That is another one I forgot. The Marston house. Now, I will say that in some films, in some adaptations, the Marston house looks too rickety for me. But it's supposed to look,
especially something that's supposed to be upscale people coming in and living there.
Yeah.
Like, I don't mind looking rickety to begin, like you said, but you want to see them actually making some type of improvements if they're like really up highfalutin people.
and the house, it needs to look old. It needs to look like that house that everybody has in their neighborhood.
Right.
That's afraid. Like they tell stories about it. Oh, that's the old Johnson house. Don't go in there. And it needs to look like your neighborhood haunted house,
right?
But it doesn't need to look like it's completely falling apart. And I think they nailed the house in this. That leads me to a con though, is they did not go into the lore of all the crazy shit that happened in the house,
right?
Like, the brothel, the cult, the murders, all the stuff. You see that for just a second on the microfiche when he's scrolling through the film on the computer.
Yeah, like I said, they completely gloss over it because I think in William Sadler, the sheriff, doesn't he make like a little statement? Well, you were from here, then you certainly know about that house.
Yeah, and that's about as far as it goes with the creepy lore. And in the book, especially the book.
Yeah.
But in the other films as well, it's known. Like the house is known. Like it's the kind of house that if you go into public and mention the name of the house, people are like, oh man, we don't talk about that kind of thing.
Right.
So it's a very hush-hush kind of topic.
Right.
In which it doesn't even go into that. So that's a con for me.
Right. I have to agree with you, like as far as that con goes. One con for me will kind of bounce off each other, but one con for me, we mentioned earlier how the film was shot beautifully and had some great setups and transitions and things of that nature.
Yep.
But a con for me is, to me, it's a lot of style and not a lot of substance. Like
Correct.
We're talking about character. I mean, you were discussing character development. They just seem to fly through, and I know it's because they know they only had 2 hours to tell this story, so they felt like they really had to rush to get from A to B to C and so on and so forth. But they totally missed the mark with the character development because, for instance, the kid Mark, we see him at the very beginning of the movie. He gets into that fight, and then you completely don't see him again until is it Danny or Ralph? I think it's Danny.
It's one of the boys.
One of the boys comes
to
to his house, so he's just completely gone, and to me it makes him more like an afterthought because then you just kind of shoehorn him back in, and it kind of goes back to William Sadler. They give his character nothing to do in this movie.
Yeah,
you see him at the beginning welcoming Ben Mears back into town and basically just giving him a warning not to be any trouble for him. Then you see him with the father. And then you see him trying to leave town, and then they don't even give him a proper death in this movie. Like, I'm not even mad that he dies, but I mean, at least give me something. He has no arc at all in this movie, and they just toss him away. And to me, it's a good allegory for his character, because it's just a toss away character. It's just toss him away when we kill him.
And Sadler's a great actor.
He is. That's why it's a total waste for me. Like, when I seen they casted him, when I first seen William Sadler was cast for Salem's Lot, I was like, this will be good. I'm so excited, because he's in The Mist. He's in Shawshank.
He's in the first episode of Tales from the Crypt.
Tales from the Crypt. But he's like a staple for these King movies, where to me, I was like, that's a good omen. We got Bill Sadler in this movie, and they just totally waste him.
Yep. And that's another con I will go back to, is it doesn't, for me, have that Stephen King feel.
Right.
And I will give you a little bit of an example of what I mean. Pet Sematary has a great Stephen King feel. He's even plays the priest in the film.
Yeah.
And it has those fall leaves coming down. It has that, feels like it's shot in Maine. This one was actually shot, we found that in Boston. But that Maine and around those areas up there, and there's a few areas that you can cheat for Maine that have that feel, and but it just didn't have that feel for me of Pet Sematary, Shawshank, Dark Half. All those films have that very specific Stephen King feel. And this one didn't do it for me.
Yeah, I mean, more I think about it, I mean, at first I was trying to defend it, because I know they do drop some Easter eggs in it, but I mean, you do make a great point with it, how it's kind of lacking in that film. I know, like I said, they mentioned like the Arroyo River when you think about Stand By Me, so they do drop some little nuggets in there, but it doesn't have that main feel, especially in the filter they shoot the film. It looks like just dry out there.
It looks like a 70s filter, which is what they're going for, which is fine. But it doesn't feel like Maine. It doesn't feel like Maine, the town itself, it only really shows the hustle and bustle of the town in the scene where he drives in the beginning. Right. When Ben Mears drives into the town, you see the hustle and bustle, people on the streets, doing their thing, and that's about it.
Right.
And what was the other thing I was trying to remember was just the Ben Mears character itself.
Oh, just how he really has nothing to do.
He has nothing to do. He does absolutely nothing in this.
Right.
And, the first one he's played by David Soul, and he's awesome.
Right.
Because it starts out, he's kind of like action-packed. He's a writer, but he's still got that action. This one, he doesn't do anything. The second film, of course, he was played by Rob Lowe, and he's more of a thinking man's kind of writer. So he is a writer. Stephen King was a writer. He's kind of putting himself in there. That was really well done. This one, he didn't. The only time you see him referencing being a writer is you see him on the book. Yeah. And you see him at the library, and that's it.
Yeah. And I kind of feel the same way about him. Like he doesn't really get his hands dirty till towards the end, whenever he gets snatched up and you think he's actually dead, and he does actually kill a vampire then. Yeah. But then he'll turn around and do stupid stuff where you can clearly see that Susan's turn. There's no hope for her. There's nothing you can do, but he risks himself and the others in his party just trying to hold on to her. Yeah. And it's little stuff like that. And to me, that it's a minor nitpick of mine, but it's stuff that nobody normal at that point in the game, when you've seen so many people transition and turn into a vampire, would be dumb enough to say, well, we can still, you gotta find some way to save her. And that brings me to another nitpick of mine we're talking about when the doctor gets bit and she uses a rabies shot, and I'm like, what? Yeah. What? There's no explanation of why that might even work. Why she's even? I can get for trying it, but to me, if you're going to go that route, it shouldn't even work. Then it should have been something you laughed off. But I just thought that made me roll my eyes.
And then it cuts to, in the book spends a lot of time breaking down the town. So the town is a character. Right. Not only is the Marston House a character, but the town is its own character. The people of the town have their secrets. Who's sleeping with who's secretly enemies with who's feuding, who's best friends, who's doing what. The town is a character. The only time it references the creepiness of the town, when the vampires come out, is you have one shot in the film that shows all the newspapers thrown on the doorsteps, and nobody's picked them up. Right. So and then the town's kind of looks empty for just about 5 seconds. That whole thing needs to be really dive into this stuff.
It goes back to what we were talking about earlier, when it's the style or substance. They're just rushing to get from A to B to C, and don't really take no time to make you really care for these characters. The only character in this movie that I actually cared for was the teacher, and I thought the actor that played Matthew, Bill Camp did a fantastic job in this movie. You know, like I said, even though then they just had him spouting off exposition just so the audience could know what's going on. Because like you were talking about how they have him just quick little shots where he already knows everything, but you don't really see how he's got
how he solved the problem. Yeah,
Right.
he's going from A to Z, but he hasn't solved. How did he figure out they were vampires? How did he figure out Straker and Barlow? How did he just all of a sudden knows it? And that leads to my next topic is you cannot pull this kind of story off in 2 hours. I don't care who you are.
Right.
I don't care if Orson Welles directed it. You're not going to pull this off without it being a miniseries or a show.
Yeah.
Now, if it was a 1 hour episode, 8 episode show, maybe you could get to it.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head. I think the best way to do it would be a miniseries, like you said, or a show, like especially like you said, 8 episodes. I think that'd be perfect. But I still think you could go the route like the It movies did and break it up into 2 chapters. Because you'd have 4 hours to get where you're going. And you still got plenty of action that you can delve into to where you can find a good logical point to be a cliffhanger and then start into the next movie to bring you on.
Yeah, do it like that.
But in 2 hours, like I said, there's just no way. There's so much you have to get rid of that's important. And, I mean, we've seen that in this one, like the whole third act is just
the third act derails.
Garbage.
And it pulls the Pet Sematary remake, and they go, "We're going to switcheroo the ending."
Right.
And you're going to lose so much of your climax at the Marston house with the showdown with the vampire, where he kind of picks off the characters one by one.
Right.
And at one point, you're supposed to think, do these characters even have a chance against the vampire?
Exactly.
And we didn't even get to that. We get a drive-in movie theater, which is ridiculous, by the way, and then the vampire's killed in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
He's stabbed twice and killed. Spoiler alert.
Well,
and it's like, no, you need to have a Rocky Balboa, Apollo Creed fight where one character you think is not going to make it, and the other one you're like, I don't know if he's going to make it, dude. And they
I
just
really
didn't
think somebody in a suit say, you know what would look cool? Barlow standing in front of the projector being backlit, and they're like, how can we get that? Oh, we'll have him at the drive-in movie theater. But I mean, I'll be honest, I can let the drive-in slide if they end up back at the Marsden house. Say they realize that's where all the minions are hiding out. Let's go kill them.
Sure.
And then we'll have the final battle at the Marsden's house. I could totally accept that. But then when you have Barlow have his casket there in front of God and everybody, and where everybody can get to it in the middle of the daylight, that's just stupid. Stupid.
And I was watching with my brother last night, and simultaneously you were here watching it as well. But he pointed out a thing that I've always shouted myself is in the 1970s. So the vampires are hiding in the trunks of the cars, right?
Right. Kind of like using it as a coffin.
Yeah, and in the 1970s there were no quick escape release latches in the trunks of cars because they didn't care at that time. So you're not, if you get that, that's why you see in your old gangster films and all your stuff, if you get put in the trunk of a car in the 60s and 70s, you're not getting out unless somebody lets you out.
Yeah. There are some cars I remember then. Now with these models, like we didn't look at them, they didn't have time to do it. But some of them you can knock down the back seat and crawl out.
Right.
But the majority, like you said, you're exactly right.
There's no safety features in there.
And there's a lot to. And one thing I have to mention, if I don't, I'm just going to regret it if I don't get this in the video. The character of Susan's mother.
Oh God. Just why?
It's bad. Yeah, it's bad writing because you don't really know her full motivations other than Straker has somehow wooed her and make her think if we have Susan in here, it's going to solve all your problems. She's going to live the happiest life. But to know that they're vampires and herself not being a vampire and not even showing that you're a protector of us during the day or something, like, not even showing how we got to there, and then just have her whip out the 12 gauge shotgun and start mowing people down in her big hat.
And her big hat. Her big hat. We were joking about that as well.
It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Her big hat.
So.
Oh yeah, it's just, if you want to watch it, Friends and Fiends, give it a shot.
Well, I will say this. The same thing I told my kids. If you've never read the book and you've never seen Tobe Hooper's or the other miniseries that came out, I believe is in 03, 04, somewhere around there. If you've not seen those and you do watch this and you really don't have any history of Salem's Lot.
If you don't have a bias, then watch it,
You'll probably like it just fine.
Right.
But now, if you're a fan of the other ones and you see how they tinker stuff around, because that goes before we wind down. I know you don't want to completely carbon copy like what Hooper did, the book did, but you've got to find that balance to where you're not straying so far that it looks nothing like what the source material is.
Yeah.
And now how you do that, I don't know, because you're going to have people on both sides of the fence. But when we're talking about taking the final battle out of that house, and then you don't really have a boss battle, somebody's got to sit there and say, we've got to fix this before we get it out there.
Yeah, there's no boss battle. There's no house. I mean, the house doesn't have the eerie quality that haunts the town, because the house really essentially hangs over the town like a dark cloud.
Yes, it does.
And the house is that part of the town that they're like, we wish we could forget this, but we can't because it's there and it reminds us of what happened.
Right.
You don't even reference that in this movie.
Let me ask you then, too, while I'm thinking about this one. What did you think of Barlow and his makeup?
It was okay. I would have went darker. I wouldn't have shown Barlow until damn near the end.
I would have, I agree with you.
I mean, you can have hints of him. You can have shadows, and you can have.
I probably wouldn't have had him shown until the priest, just kind of like with Toby Hooper.
Exactly.
Not trying to copy that, but it's more powerful that way. Because then when you see the priest lose his faith, it makes more sense, because then you have that initial shock of seeing him.
Yeah, I wouldn't show him. I mean, maybe shadows.
Yeah.
Or kind of like a Nosferatu style shadow. Maybe that.
Yeah.
But showing him right up front, and I thought, they're going to show him in the trailer, which they didn't.
Right.
Luckily, they didn't. And I thought, well, maybe they'll show him in the first 5 minutes of the movie, and sure enough, you see a glimpse of him in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, when the kids kidnap.
And
I agree with you wholeheartedly. I don't hate his makeup. I'm glad it's practical, but I think he's too pristine. I think they need to muddy him up a little bit, maybe give him some scars. I think about Toby Hooper's version, how the teeth aren't aren't perfect. Just something like that to give him a little bit more character. But I will give them kudos for going the practical route on that, and at least having prosthetics and all that good makeup on him.
Yeah, even though he dies really, really quickly with no conflict resolution.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, let's get down to the Goldblum ranking.
Yeah.
How many Goldblums you got?
Well, I'm gonna give it 2.5 out of 5. I think actually I'll go lower. I'm gonna go 2 out of 5 because I did think the first 2/3 of the movie, although I had minor nitpicks with it, I thought it was just a mediocre movie. I didn't think it was a terrible movie by no means, and even I enjoyed a lot of it up to a certain point, because it's like I was telling you, I said we've seen so much bad horror come out lately that was still a step above most of what's coming out.
Right.
But then once that third act begins and they completely change everything around from the book, from the other movies, miniseries that we've seen, and it didn't add anything to it but made it worse, it just turned into a complete train wreck there at the end. I mean, it was just a complete miss. It had me rolling my eyes, thinking things you shouldn't be thinking about when you're watching it. Why did they go this route? Who made this decision? It's almost like a test screening went bad and the studio stepped in and gave notes that were dumb. Instead of pushing back, they just did exactly what they asked for.
Yeah.
So yeah, I feel comfortable. I'm gonna go 2 out of 5.
2 out of 5 Goldblums.
Yeah. How about you?
I'm gonna go with 1.5 Goldblums because it just didn't give me that Stephen King vibe. The whole time I was wanting it, I was like, maybe they'll come up with that Stephen King vibe.
Yeah.
I want to see some Maine, some New Hampshire, some architecture, some fall leaves on the ground, something. Didn't have that. The characters were too watered down, too neutered, if you will, for me.
And no development.
No development at all between the characters. And I hate characters that have to come in and over-explain, like if I need you to step in and tell me why Neo can dodge bullets, we
have a problem.
We have a problem. I need to be able to figure that out for myself, so that way I feel like I figured it out.
That's why, as much as I love Bill Camp as the teacher, that's all he's there for, is to give that exposition.
He's a vampire.
Yeah, so the audience knows what's going on.
Yeah, everybody, and he has that little comment. Everybody in Salem's Lot knows everybody's business. So it's what he says in the film.
Yeah.
So that's supposed to sum up how everybody knows everybody's business, instead of letting us see that the lady that runs the boarding house is involved with this guy, and there's all these weird, shady things going on in the town.
Trucker catching people in the fair.
Yeah, and we're just going to bypass all that dirty dealings of the town, and just not even have the town be a character. So yeah, 1.5 Goldblums for me. And
we need to cover at some point, Friends and Fiends. We'll need to cover like the classic Salem
The classic
with Toby
Salem
Hooper,
lot,
and
yep.
then the miniseries, and hit those two.
Yeah, we will.
But at the time of our review, Rotten Tomatoes seems to be leaning what we think to the critics give it like a 48% rotten score, and the audience itself 39%. So it's even
39.
lower. So.
Yep.
Friends and Fiends, let us know if you've seen this movie. Let us know where you fall off. Did you enjoy it? If so, just let us know, like, what did you enjoy about it? Love to have that, like, discourse and that conversations, because, like you said, just because we didn't like it, we don't expect you just fall and say, I hate it. We encourage you to watch it and form your own opinion.
Right, totally. And as always, remember, stay spooky.
Let me know when it's on.
There we go, buddy.
Are we on?
Yeah, we're on.
It's on.
We're set to pop.
Oh, it's on?
Yeah.
Oh, it's on. Ghost of the Most, man.